one thing I want to hit on that kind of all this leads to is like, how much better are they? Because again, cap space wise, according to Cap Friendly, they are negative 2.241 million, which again can be fixed with the LTIR. Maybe they move off some cap space when those guys return. So I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't think that they're going to like deal Mike Riley anytime soon for this or anything like that. Maybe they do, but I don't really see them doing it just given that they have the LTIR there. But when it comes to their playoff hopes, because I know I see some comments on it, it's a huge thing everyone's kind of thinking about is like, where does this put them? Where does this put them in the Atlantic? And to me, I don't think it. I think all along we've expected this, so I don't think this is like, whoa, this came out of nowhere.
Right.
This has changed the game. Again, it's going to come down to the most pivotal months of the year, and this sounds terrible, might be the first 1 to 2 months because that if they can tread water through that, if they can be safely above 500 during that, if they can retain either a wild card spot or like right underneath it, you're in good shape because once Marchand comes back and McAvoy and Grzelcyk, you have a full team. And that full team, at fully healthy, should be third, at worst, fourth in the Atlantic.
Yeah.
I
No.
think.
I agree. I think it's one of those things where does it necessarily move the needle enough that they're in that upper echelon of contenders like Colorado? No. Right. I think you still have to worry about those kind of teams waiting at the end of the road there. But as you said, I think it's all going to come down to how they fare out of the gate, which is a big ask for this team. Not only is it the fact that you're missing guys like Marchand, you're missing guys like McAvoy and Grzelcyk. Schedule's pretty tough in the start of the year, right? We
Yes.
talked about that stretch they have in November where they play like Colorado twice, Tampa, Carolina. It's some brutal stretch there, right around when I think Marchand and McAvoy should come back. That all right, it's one thing if you're kind of treading water, but what if you're 10-18 at that point of the season, right? That's when things get a little bit tougher in terms of how you're going to navigate that. And who knows, they can go on a deep run once everyone's healthy and able to roll into the playoffs. But as we say every year, a lot can change over the course of an NHL season. You have injuries that pop up, you have other developments, all these hurdles you have to clear. So are the Bruins better than they were last year? When healthy, I would say so, just because I think if Krejci is the same player he was, let's say his last year with the Bruins when he had Taylor Hall, and he should be at that same level this year if he has a guy like David Pastrnak on his line. They'll be right in the mix, right? Like, again, you can look at other factors that could help them out. Does Jeremy Swayman take another big step forward, which would be a huge plus for them? I don't think Charlie McAvoy, as great as he is, his ceiling's been necessarily hit yet. Will you have guys like Brendan Carlo bounce back maybe into Jim Montgomery's system? Is Jake DeBrusk build off of last year?
Hampus Lindholm.
Hampus Lindholm, a full year with him and how he works out. You have guys like Grzelcyk who was injured last year. Does he take it? You've got so many other factors that can kind of either, improve this team or hurt them in terms of just what steps they go going forward. Because you have so many guys, even last year, for as much as the usual suspects kind of led the charge once again for the Bruins, you had also guys that were either scuffling that weren't able to help get that team to its full potential. So are they going to be in the mix? Yep. And that's sometimes with a game like hockey, that's all you kind of need to be in that mix and go on a run. But you look at the amount of supporting casts on this team that can and should hopefully at least either rebound and get back to their usual level of play or could take steps forward. If you're a Bruins fan, at the very least, you should be encouraged because for at least one more year, you're going to have a competitive team that hopefully will be able to play for some meaningful games once we get to April and May.
Yeah, and again, I mean, you look at the division, right? Better than the Sabres, better than the Canadiens, better than the Red Wings. Not really debatable. Senators, I would say you're much better than. I know the Senators made some big additions, but I think on paper you're better. So it really comes down to Toronto. And Toronto is brutal in net. That's the one thing. They're just not good at net. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if Toronto, just given your injuries at the beginning of the year, gains points on you and finishes above you in the standings. But I mean, again, their goaltending situation is not great. So again, I look at that and I say that's where you want. Your target spot in the Atlantic is third or fourth. Also, getting this extra offense down the middle with Bergeron and Krejci helps you against a team like Florida, who's really bad on defense, who is not good, who took steps back in that in the Matthew Tkachuk trade. So again, suddenly you're now in the mix more, which is a good thing for them. Because again, I think, there was also part of me that when I saw the Bergeron news, I thought to myself, what if Krejci doesn't come back? Because I thought they'd announce them together. I thought they would just do like they'd put them together. They basically did. Who's news? You know what you know who benefits the most from today's news?
What was that, Evan?
Jim Montgomery. Jim Montgomery benefits the most from today's news because, again, coming in as a new head coach, he mentioned in his introductory presser that Bergeron is basically like a coach in the room. He talked to him already. He, wanted him in there. All those things. I think it's easy the transition. And again, Montgomery's a player's coach. If he lets Bergeron and Krejci and those guys kind of run the room, that's not a bad group to be letting run the room, So I think for him, it's a lot better knowing he's going to have a legit number one and number two center. And also that you're going to have this veteran leadership in there. I know it sounds like corny, but I do think it really matters, especially with a new head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of the same thing that Bruce Cassidy talked about all these years ago, right? When he first started off there, in terms of how much of a plus it is as any coach going to new situation where you got to learn the players and try to hammer down a new system or get guys playing to your style of play. It helps when also you have, these veteran cornerstones in the room that you can turn to that, all right, you're already going to be busy installing systems and going over film and hammering home your kind of message. It's another plus to be able to turn to the veterans in the room and have them kind of run those things as well. So yeah, as you said, it's going to be a huge plus for Montgomery that he can turn to guys like Bergeron and Krejci and even guys that have been around for a while now, even Kahlo, Coyle, all these other guys. Like they've got a very strong supporting cast there, and by having guys like Bergeron and Krejci and Martian in place, the Bruins, even though sooner or later they're going to have to get a clean slate and build for the future, the identity that Bergeron and these guys did such a good job of cultivating and fostering years ago, it's still in place, right? Like you've got a new coach, you've got younger players added to the mix, but as long as those guys are still there leading the way, there's still going to be the same kind of Bruins team in terms of the identity and the principles they kind of work and operate with. So yeah, as you said, for Montgomery, who's already got his work cut out for him, it just makes it that much easier in terms of stepping into that room and kind of taking over the ship this upcoming season.
Yeah, see, I'm seeing a question from a YouTube commenter. Momo Adomo asks, can the Bruins afford Kadri? And the answer is no, not
No,
anymore. It
not
really
anymore.
is not happening. You don't also need Nazem Kadri. They don't need Nazem Kadri. That's the other thing. Like they've got 1 and 2. They don't need him right now. I mean, if he was young, again, if Nazem Kadri was the level he was and he was like 25, first of all, he'd already be scooped up by now. So that's like a whole nother thing. But like maybe you'd go for him. Because again, the future down the middle, I mean, we did prospects on Poke the Bear last week, and there are some encouraging guys in there that could potentially maybe be number ones and number twos at center. I still think it's the biggest issue this team faces is like
Yes.
who is kind of taking over for Bergeron and Krejci. I mean, the fact that a year after Krejci leaves, this team still needs to call David Krejci and bring him back is a thing that is sort of an issue and speaks to the development. But I don't think it's just us kind of, not thinking, but I do think that they have guys in the system who could potentially down the line be number one and number two centers. Now, again, are they going to take over for Bergeron perfectly and Krejci perfectly? No, probably not. But again, if you need them for a bridge, whatever it might be, I do think, guys like Brett Harrison, and I know he's bad defensively, but like Georgi Merkulov, and I think that there's some excitement there. I also want to say the Mason Lohrei interview, I saw someone ask about this. I think that will either go like this weekend or it'll be Bruins beat next week. It was supposed to be. It was supposed to go Tuesday. It was supposed to go tomorrow. But this kind of took precedent just because big news, huge news. So all this news happens. Do you have any other like big thoughts from this, like takeaways that you had, or surprises? Were you surprised by any of this?
Yeah, I don't think it's any real surprise other than maybe just the fact that I thought this was going to be a situation where, with them signing these contracts, I thought he was looking at least 3.5 million for each guy in terms of base salary, and I thought this was going to be a situation where if they weren't having any moves in terms of moving a guy like Riley or Foligno or anything like that, they were going to be entering training camp with $5-6 million over the cap. So now that you're in a situation where all those guys are signed, and you're looking at, what is it? I think like 2.5, maybe 2.2 million over the cap.
I
Again,
think it's
you have to
2.2.
get under that at some point, but it's not an insurmountable kind of mountain to get over now. It's not like you're moving multiple players out or
It's not like you're
you have
Vegas.
exactly. It's not like Vegas or anything like that. So again, you don't want to be dealing with kind of cap jail in terms of getting under it. But for the Bruins, in terms of what both Bergeron and Krejci did as a solid for the team, it's going to be probably at least one player, and that's about it in terms of getting under that cap limit and still fielding what should be, when healthy, a pretty solid roster.